Welcome back, deep divers. Today we're going deep into the world of media and advertising.
Ooh, exciting.
It is, right. And you guys wanted to learn more about how the media shapes opinions and how advertises and the whole fake news thing.
Yeah, big topics.
Huge. And we've got your sources right here, a whole stack ready to go.
Should be a fascinating deep dive.
Totally. So let's just jump right in, okay? One of the articles talked about this thing called framing.
Right.
It's kind of crazy to think, like, the same info can be presented in totally different ways.
Absolutely. And one of your sources, the Pew Research Center report, actually shows this in action.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they looked at how a recent economic policy was covered, and it was fascinating.
What did they find?
Well, outlets leaning left, they really highlighted job creation,
Yeah.
while right-leaning outlets focused on the potential tax burdens.
Wow.
Same policy, different focus, completely different perception.
It's like they're cherry picking what to show to tell the story they want.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
this ties right into agenda setting, which another one of your sources talks about.
Agenda setting, remind me what that is again.
Basically, it's the media's power to decide what we talk about as a society.
What do you mean?
Well, they choose what to cover, what to focus on, and that influences what we think is important.
So they're not just biased in how they report something, but in what they choose to report on in the first place.
Exactly. There's an article here that looked at climate change coverage.
Okay.
Over the past decade, most major outlets now acknowledge it's real, right?
Yep.
But the amount of coverage compared to, say, political scandals or celebrity news, it's tiny.
Oh, interesting.
And that can lead people to think climate change isn't as urgent as it really is.
Huh. Never thought of it that way. So even no information can be a way of influencing.
Absolutely. And that's why it's so important to be aware of these subtle ways media can shape our view of the world.
It's making me realize I need to be more proactive about where I get my information from.
I think that's a great takeaway.
Yeah. Okay, now, on to something a little different. Let's talk advertising.
Oh, the persuasive powers of advertising.
Right. I mean, we've all fallen for a clever ad campaign at some point.
Absolutely. And your sources go deep into the psychology of it.
I'm intrigued.
One of them talks about brand loyalty.
Like that feeling you get when you just, love a certain brand.
Exactly, like it's part of who you are.
So are you saying advertisers can, manufacture that feeling?
They certainly try. And one of your articles from the Journal of Consumer Research analyze how brands like Apple, for example,
Okay, yeah.
they build this intense loyalty by creating a sense of community among their customers.
So it's not just about the product, but about belonging to something.
It taps into that human need for connection and identity.
So the language they use, the images in their ads, even the events they sponsor.
All of it works to build that brand image and attract certain types of people.
Makes me think of that Nike slogan, "Just do it."
Oh, yeah. Class.
It wasn't about shoes, it was about empowerment.
Exactly. They were selling a lifestyle.
Pretty genius, actually, but also kind of sneaky.
It can be. But let's move on to those persuasive techniques the research mentioned.
Ooh, yes. Tell me all the secrets. How do they get us craving stuff?
Well, one that stood out was the use of emotional appeals.
Like those ASPCA commercials?
Oh my gosh, yes. With the Sarah McLachlan song.
Heartbreaking. It's like emotional blackmail, but it works.
It does. They play on our empathy and bam, donations.
Clever, but sneaky.
Right. But it's not always bad. Your sources pointed out they can be used for good too.
Like how?
Think public service announcements encouraging healthy habits.
Oh, right. Like don't smoke and stuff.
Exactly. So it depends on the intent.
Makes sense. Okay, let's switch gears a bit and talk about something that's been in the news a lot lately. Fake news.
Ooh, yeah, that's a big one.
It feels like we're drowning in information these days. It's hard to know what to believe.
One of your articles called it an infodemic.
Yikes. So, how do we even start to make sense of it all?
Well, your sources have some really good advice. And the first thing is understanding the difference between misinformation and disinformation.
Yeah, I remember seeing that in the outline, but can you explain it again?
Sure. One of your sources, a study from Oxford, defines misinformation as false info that's spread accidentally.
Okay.
So like a rumor that gets out of hand.
Like an honest mistake.
Exactly. But disinformation, that's deliberate, intended to mislead.
So misinformation is accidental, disinformation is a straight up lie.
You got it. And both can have serious consequences.
Oh, I bet.
One of your sources used the Pizzagate conspiracy theory as an example.
That was a wild one.
Right. People believed a pizzeria was fronting a child trafficking ring.
So crazy.
And it shows how fast false info can spread online, especially when it plays on people's fears.
Wow, so how do we protect ourselves from all this? The research talked about credible sources.
Right, and there's a guide to media literacy from the Stanford History Education Group that has some great tips.
Okay, what do they say?
First, check the website you're on. Is it a legit news organization with a good track record?
Gotcha.
Or is it some random blog pushing an agenda?
Makes sense.
And be wary of headlines that seem too good to be true or try to make you feel a certain way.
Like those clickbaity ones.
Exactly. And always try to check the info with multiple sources.
Sounds like it takes effort to be informed these days.
It does, but it's worth it. We can't just passively take in information anymore. We need to be active.
Like information detectives.
I like it. And this is just the start of our deep dive.
I'm ready for more.
Let's keep going.
Let's do it. All right, so we've seen how media can frame things and set the agenda, and how advertisers, well, they're good at what they do.
They are.
But let's dig into some specific questions from your research, okay? This first one's a biggie. Why do people trust media less nowadays?
Yeah, that's a tough one. But your sources had some interesting takes on it.
Like what?
Well, a lot of experts pointed to the 24-hour news cycle.
Makes sense.
It's like this constant pressure to churn out content.
And that means
Quality suffers. Speed and sensationalism win over accuracy.
so it's not just fake news, it's how news is made and consumed that's changed.
Exactly, and that makes it so much easier for misinformation to spread.
Yeah, think about it. News is now like, what? Headlines on social media? Sound bites?
Right, it's hard to separate fact from fiction when you're bombarded with all that.
It's like trying to drink from a fire hose and figure out if the water's even clean at the same time.
That's a great way to put it. And then there's this blurring of lines between news and opinion.
Oh yeah, that's everywhere.
A lot of outlets now prioritize commentary over straight reporting.
But isn't there always some subjectivity in news? Like, how do we know what's real analysis and what's just bias?
That's the million-dollar question. And your sources suggest paying close attention to language.
Okay, how so?
Look at whether the author is stating facts or giving opinions. Are they using emotionally charged words, or is it balanced?
So, like, reading between the lines.
Exactly. And also, always check the source's reputation. Do they have a history of being fair and accurate?
It's a lot of work to stay informed these days.
It is, but it's crucial to be a critical consumer of information.
Okay, now on to another question. What makes an ad effective? This feels like your area of expertise.
Well, your sources gave some amazing insights into persuasion and how advertisers, well, they know how to influence us.
Spill beans.
One key thing is understanding the target audience.
So, like, knowing who you're talking to?
Right. It's not about one message for everyone. It's about tailoring your approach.
Like solving a puzzle, figuring out what pieces fit together?
Exactly. And once you know your audience, you can craft a message that hits them emotionally.
Because people don't just buy stuff logically, right?
Nope. Emotions play a huge role.
Funny how we think we're so rational, but ads get us every time.
They do. And one way they do it is through storytelling.
Oh, yeah, like those ads that make you feel nostalgic.
Exactly. They create narratives that trigger those feelings and links them to their brand.
So it's not just a product anymore, it's like part of your life story.
Right. And another powerful tool is social proof.
Like when you see a celebrity endorsing something?
Yes. Or all those online reviews.
You know, I read those religiously.
We all do. It's like, if everyone else loves it, it must be good.
Makes you feel like you're missing out if you don't have it.
And advertisers use that, creating urgency, limited time offers.
Oh, yeah, those get me every time.
It plays on our fear of scarcity and our desire to fit in.
So much goes into advertising, it's kind of mind-blowing.
It is. It's like a chess game with our own minds.
We're always a few steps behind.
Which is why it's so important to be aware of these tactics.
Okay, so we've covered media bias, advertising tricks. Now let's loop back to fake news.
Right. And one of your sources, the Knight Foundation report, made a really interesting point.
What was that?
They said that because trust in traditional media has declined,
Yeah, we talked about that.
it's created a space for alternative sources to pop up.
And a lot of those aren't reliable, right?
Unfortunately, no. And it all goes back to agenda setting and framing.
How so?
Well, when people don't trust mainstream sources, they look for information that confirms what they already believe.
Yeah.
Those echo chambers. Exactly. And that's where misinformation thrives.
It's a vicious cycle. The less we trust, the more we seek out info that reinforces that distrust.
Exactly. And that's why it's so important to break out of those echo chambers.
And talk to people who think differently than us.
Absolutely. Listen to other perspectives, be open to being wrong, and have those tough conversations.
Easier said than done, but I see your point.
It's crucial for navigating this world of information overload.
Okay, so on that note, How can we become more discerning consumers of information? Give me the cheat sheet.
Oh, well, one tip that kept coming up was to slow down.
In this fast-paced world,
I know, it's hard, but we need to be more mindful about what we're consuming.
not just skimming headlines.
Exactly. Take the time to understand the information. Think about the source, their biases.
Okay, so slow down. What else?
Diversify your information diet.
Like eating your veggies?
Kind of. Don't rely on just one source for news.
I'm guilty of that.
Try to get a variety of viewpoints, even those you disagree with.
Step out of my comfort zone.
Exactly. And last but not least, fact check everything.
Everything.
Well, as much as you can, consider the source, look for evidence, use fact-checking websites.
Be like those myth-busting shows.
Exactly. Be your own information detective.
This is a lot to remember.
I know, but becoming a savvy consumer of information is a journey, not a destination.
Okay, so we've tackled media bias, advertising, fake news. My brain is full.
I hear you. It's heavy stuff. Maybe we need a little break.
I think so. Some good news would be nice.
Actually, one of your sources did talk about the positive impacts of media and advertising.
Really? Tell me more. I need something uplifting.
Well, think about how media can raise awareness about important issues.
Like investigative journalism exposing corruption.
Exactly. Or documentaries that shed light on injustice. Even social media can mobilize people.
True. Media can be a powerful force for good.
In advertising, even though it gets a bad rap, can also be used for good.
How so?
Those public service announcements, encouraging healthy habits, promoting diversity.
Okay, yeah, those are good.
It all comes down to intent.
It's a tool. It can be used in different ways.
Exactly. And as consumers, we need to be aware of both the good and the bad.
So we can make informed choices.
You got it.
Okay, so it's not all doom and gloom. Media and advertising can be positive, but we need to be aware of the potential for manipulation.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
This has been quite the deep dive.
It has, but it's not over yet.
Bring on the next part. All right, deep divers. We've been through a lot. We've talked about how media can shape our opinions, the tricks advertisers use, and how to spot fake news. Phew, my brain is full.
I bet. It's a lot to take in, but hopefully you're feeling more empowered knowing all this.
I am, definitely. But okay, let's get practical. What are some things we can actually do to be more, like, media savvy in our everyday lives?
So many good tips came up in your research, but one that's repeated over and over is being aware of our own biases.
Oh, right. Biases. Everyone has them, right?
We do, whether we realize it or not, and they can really affect how we see things.
Okay, so how do we even know what our biases are?
Well, one suggestion was to pay attention to your emotions, like when you're reading an article.
Okay.
If you find yourself getting angry or defensive, take a moment to ask yourself, why?
So, like, am I mad because this goes against what I already believe?
Exactly. Are you reacting to the tone, the writer, or the actual message?
It's like, check yourself before you wreck yourself.
Exactly. Don't just blindly accept or reject info based on how it makes you feel.
Okay, check my emotions. Got it. What else?
Another big one is seeking out different perspectives. Don't just stick to sources that agree with you.
Yeah, I can be guilty of that.
Try reading news from outlets that have different viewpoints. It might challenge you, make you think.
Maybe even change my mind about something.
Exactly. And you might learn something new in the process.
Expanding my horizons. I like it. Okay, what about fact-checking? Any tips on that?
That's crucial, right? Especially these days. And your sources had some great advice.
Tell me everything.
First, think about the source. Is it known for being accurate, impartial?
So, like, not some random website.
Right. And look for evidence, citations, links. Can you find the same info from other reliable sources?
It's like being a detective, following the trail of information.
Exactly. And don't forget about fact-checking websites like Snopes or PolitiFact.
They can be super helpful.
They are. So, yeah, be your own information detective.
Okay, be mindful of biases, get diverse perspectives, and fact check anything else.
This one's more about self-care, but it's important. Take breaks.
Breaks from what?
From the news, social media, everything.
Oh, like a digital detox.
Exactly. It's so easy to get overwhelmed by the constant flow of information.
I know, I feel that.
So step away, go for a walk, read a book, spend time with people.
Unplug and recharge.
Exactly. It's good for your mental health.
Great advice. Okay, so we've covered a lot. Media bias, advertising, fake news, the importance of critical thinking, even self-care.
It's been quite a journey.
It has, and I feel like I've learned so much. Thanks for guiding us through this deep dive.
My pleasure. It's been great discussing all this with you.
And to everyone listening, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of media and advertising. We hope you've learned some valuable tips and feel empowered to be more informed and engaged consumers of information out there. Remember, stay curious, stay informed, and keep those critical thinking skills sharp. Until next time.